Now I'm like 100% fully immersed in MMA Media.
You're working with and for MMA
so I work
All-Stars.
for the All-Star, which most of my content goes up on that. I do a little side work as well, covering one championship shows. I think I'm gonna start doing that again. But yeah, like there's a lot of investment, man. Like when I first started out, I invested a lot of time into like learning how to write and learning how to do all this other stuff, even like interviewing, face to face. Like I would watch so many videos on like how to interview people, how to get answers out of people that you want. In a way, how to manipulate people into saying things that, that are true, but maybe they wouldn't say that.
Welcome to Fruiting Body Podcast with your host, Brendan. Today we have an absolute legend of a guest. It's Korean John, or as better known as I fucked that up big time. Hyon Ko. We went over this before. It's like, because I'm speaking a bit of Chinese and Thai that now you're asking me to pronounce Korean. It's breaking my brain. Now today we're going to be talking about John, mostly about his experience in MMA, and he's interviewing absolute legends. So you got to go check him out on the MMA All-Star, and we'll leave all links in the description to that. We're going to learn a lot about what it was like growing up as a Korean in the U.S. way before social media. So all that hate speech, and we talked a little bit about before the podcast. We're going to let you hear that exactly on his side of the story, and especially moving back to Korea and how he also wasn't, accepted there as well. So it's a very interesting story. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe. We also have timestamps here, and you can navigate this podcast to watch different chapters. Who are we? Who is Fruiting Body Podcast? We are a medicinal mushroom company located on the island of Phuket. So we're doing things like lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, actual products from a podcast that add value to the world, unlike some of those other podcasts selling you sugar water. So without further ado, let's get this podcast started with John. First, thanks a lot for joining, buddy.
No worries, man. No worries. We've been trying to do this, right?
I think for 2 years, year and a half, at least a year and a half.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the last time you were just leaving.
Yeah.
Before we're gonna explain why is John, in Phuket training over at Bangtao Muay Thai and MMA, especially getting involved with interviewing absolute legends, and we'll talk more about that. But first, we decided let's start on who is John. Where did you grow up? And tell us about that story of living in the U.S. as a Korean, then moving back to Korea as well. And how did that experience go for you?
All right, so I was born in a small country town, right, near the border of North Korea. It sounds fake, but it's the truth, right? So I was born in this small country town in the border of North Korea. And so how did I end up in the States? Well, I was born in that town, and then my mom got divorced, right? Back then, divorce was like pretty much 0% in Korea. Right now,
what was the name of the town? Because
it's called Dongducheon.
Okay, and how do we spell that?
Dong is like D-O-N-G, Cheon, or Dongdu, do D-O, and then Cheon, C-H-E-U-N. Don't quote me on that.
Does Dong also mean north in Korean?
It does. I believe so, yes.
Because in Chinese it does the same. Okay, interesting.
No, Buk means north.
Okay.
Because North Korea is Bukhan. Yeah, anyways. So I was born in this small country, town. And then, my mom, when I was still like a baby, my mom got divorced, right? So since you're in the border town, there's a lot of like military, in there, in like military bases and whatnot. So my mom was working on the golf course on the base, and she met someone. They got familiar, and then they decided they're going to get married. So they went to the States, and then that's why I ended up in the States. I think it was like 80, 83, something like that.
So how old were you at this point?
I think I was like 4 years old.
Oh, okay, so even you're leaving Korea without even able to kind of remember leaving.
Yeah, I don't remember leaving. Yeah. I do remember bits and pieces of my childhood there, but not really leaving. But I remember arriving in America because at that time I didn't speak any English. So I only spoke Korean. So when I arrived, I jumped right into kindergarten speaking no English with just Americans, just everywhere, just running around all crazy. And so, something that's crazy is that I failed kindergarten.
Really?
Because I could.
No, keep going.
Because I wasn't able to. All right.
Or just adjust just because I'll make it look. It's okay. We just keep rolling. It's not so much the sound; it's like later, but the reels. So.
Oh, okay. Just like the face.
Yeah.
All right. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good
Okay.
too. Yeah,
Well,
just
where
more
was
so
I?
when we just do it so later when we're cropping, it looks so it's not looking like it's coming out of your head.
All right.
So you went in kindergarten. You're not speaking any English, just Korean. I mean, still 4 years old, so it's probably a bit spotty to remember. Anyways.
Yeah, for sure. And then so I failed kindergarten because I wasn't picking up the language quick enough. So I did kindergarten twice. But once I got the second year in, my English was fine. And what's wild about that is I forgot most of my Korean, within that time span, right? So I did like kindergarten to like third grade in Maryland, a town just outside of Washington, D.C. And that was my first taste of like, America, the culture, and I lived in this like apartment complex for all military families, right? And my stepdad, the man that, my mom met, he was in the military. So I was just following him around. He was still in the military at that time. And so I got my first taste of like American culture, like diversity, all of that stuff in that apartment complex. And there was like blacks, whites, Mexicans, there was everybody there because it's the military. And that was my first taste of like discrimination, which probably in my mind at that time, it was not even a thing, you know what I mean? But yeah, discrimination because there's not many Asian families in that complex. So I think there was maybe like 2 and there's like 1,000 apartments, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of a small percentage. So like, so at that time I would just like go out and, like when you're a kid back then, you go out and play. There's no like video, like, there's video games, but it's not like it is now, I mean, everybody's indoors now. Back then, everybody went outside to play, you're playing football, baseball, whatever sport is available. And man, I would basically what I would do is like I would go play sports outside in that complex, and then that would just lead into fights with kids in the neighborhood, right? So then eventually like the kids would, call me these words that I didn't know what they were. You know what I mean? They must have learned it from somewhere, but I didn't know what it was.
What age is this at?
This was like at the age of like first, second, third grade at that time.
6, 7, 8.
Yeah, 6, 7, 8. So like at 6, 7, 8, I was already fighting in the street, which nowadays you would think like if you're a Thai, if you're a Thai boxer, 6, 7, 8 sounds normal. But in America, who's fist fighting in the street at 6, 7, 8 years old? Well, I was, and I was getting jumped, and it was also like because I didn't have the support that everybody else had, you know what I mean? There's like kids from like different backgrounds and they all kind of.
What was it like there? Like when you're saying Maryland, like I'm thinking Baltimore, I'm thinking like the movie, the
Wire.
Show, The Wire. Are you talking like, is it the ghetto or is it kind of?
No, because it was a military complex. So it wasn't like, it was just like good enough. You know what I mean? The apartments were not, they were decent, you know what I mean?
That's where they're like temporary stationing these people because they're going to have to go somewhere anyway.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, so like, kids would call me like gook or chink or something like words I never even heard at that time. And I'm just like, what are they calling me? But it's like, it comes with aggression. You know what I mean? And then they start to try to like pick on you because you don't have that support. You don't have like, other Asians with you at that time. So that you eventually just get jumped because you just fight for no reason. You know what I mean? Of course, like I said earlier, like you'd go and play sports and that leads to fighting. You play sports when you were young, right?
Yeah.
And it always leads to some kind of like altercation with somebody, right? Eventually.
Yeah, it gets competitive. I mean, the Western world is in our sports, we're super competitive.
Yeah. So, but outside of that, it's just like kids, if something didn't go their way, like during, playing sports or whatnot, that's the terminology they would throw out, like racist terminology. But at that time, I didn't know what that was, you know what I mean? But then it just led to like me just like looking at them and thinking like, why are they so mad? And then them trying to attack me. And then I have to defend myself. You know what I mean? I'm not like I'm no Alex Volkanovski, right? So it's just like, I'm just fighting, you know what I mean? No skill, of course, like I did Taekwondo when I was young, but that stuff don't work in a street fight. I'm just going to tell everybody right now, I'm Korean. I'm telling you, Taekwondo is not really a thing that works in a street fight. And so I would just get jumped a lot at that time. But when I look back at it now, it was because of, not because of like my attitude or like I was picking on people or I was like a bully or something like that. It was just like, I think it was because like I was different from everybody else. And those kids never was exposed to like someone like me. You know what I mean? And it also didn't help that at that time I was learning to speak English too. So imagine the accent and all that. So, back then, I don't know. It seemed like racism was more open.
Were there other like Asians in the community, but from other Asian countries, or?
Yeah, there was like maybe like one or two other families there. But that's it.
But people, I guess, people from the Western world don't understand. Like, there's racism within Asia amongst Asians.
Yeah.
Like they will literally rank like. I mean, you could go through the ranking. Like realistically, everyone's seeing this. It's like Chinese, Japanese, Korean are like here, and then it kind of goes to what? Maybe then like Taiwanese, Thai. Well, Taiwanese can be up there too, and then it goes to Thai, and then you might go to Singapore's probably up there. But like once it gets down and not being racist, like comedians have told this joke, Asians will go over this. It's like then they're picking on like the Filipinos and the Indonesians and the Cambodians and the people from Laos just because they fall down that like economic wealth gap. Does this carry over as well, like into your Asian culture that you've seen, where
of course
where you guys are even racist against each other? But no, obviously from the Western world, unless you lived in Asia and you know other Asians as well living here, you're not really exposed to that.
Well, in the States, I think like because it's very segregated in many ways, that Asians will come together most of the time, right, to help each other most of the time. But when you start going out from that melting pot and coming into Asia where everything's, like country by country, then it's, of course, you see a lot of racism and prejudice as well. You see people, what trips me out is like, if you think so low about another country, why would you go vacation in that country? Like, why would you, spend money in that country? Why would, why would you do that? And that's what I try to, sometimes I ask people that if I think that they're racist or something towards another Asian race. If you're Asian, it's weird. To me, it's weird. Of course there's prejudice and I joke around about it a lot as well. But in reality, it's there, and you have to deal with it. And you have to deal with it. That's
you
that's
see
the
it
thing I look at
like multiple times. I've been to the Philippines, and like you'll go to these places like Boracay, and like if you're at a nice hotel, like the Chinese are just talking down to the staff, like and they have that mentality. Like there is that hierarchy in Asia as well, and you see that here. Even in Thailand, I find the hopefully I don't get in trouble for this. The people from Singapore. They talk down to staff here quite a lot. I've seen this, especially in Thailand.
Oh, yeah, you see it, well, in Thailand, right? It's a vacationing country, so you get everybody coming in, right, from all different countries, and I've seen that as well. Like even the Koreans too. The Koreans are loud, and they kind of have arrogance about them whenever they go anywhere, and I've seen. Koreans, Chinese, Japanese, not so much Japanese, but like Korean, Chinese, and, Singaporean or whatnot. I've seen those types of people get angry and show their prejudice or show their racism, in a hotel or whatnot. Because just like yourself, I've been around all over these different hotels, different areas and stuff, and you just run into people and you see them in the way that they act. But I also look at it like this. They're almost raised that way. Or they were raised that way, because there would be no other reason to act like that, right? And, like back in America, it's the same thing. The kids were raised a certain way, right? The kids were taught a certain mindset, towards like other races. And the kids just eat it up, man. And they just go out and, they don't know any better.
No,
right?
It usually comes from the grandparents, I find. Yeah. Even like I remember my grandparents when I grew up, like they were racist for no reason. You didn't know as a kid. But I don't think they were also programmed as well to be racist. I mean, it's just a whole trickle down effect.
But those years, like in elementary school in the States, like from kindergarten to third grade, like they were rough, but it wasn't too bad. Of course you get into fights, it's whatever. It's just what kids do. But the experience of me like coming back to the States as a teenager, that was different.
You mean going back to Korea?
No, well, going back to Korea and then going back to the States.
Okay,
after
so
that.
you would have you left around 8, 9 back to Korea?
Yeah, so I left like around like 4th grade, 5th grade, around that time, back to Korea, and then spent like maybe 2 to 3 more years in Korea.
This is for your stepfather going back to the military.
back to Korea for the military.
So what year is that? You're talking
That's like
95
89.
89.
Yeah, 89.
So what was the U.S. was still in South Korea, Korea.
Yeah. They're still here. They're still there
They're
right
still
now.
there. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. They're slowly pulling out, but they're still there. But yeah, back then it was just, so many bases. The military was, the presence, it was felt because, like I was living on the base and all that stuff. So
where were you going when you went back to Korea? See, when we say South Korea, does that offend Koreans?
No.
I got really, because I told you I've been to North Korea, and it's when you go there, like when you say North Korea, they got offended. Like you weren't allowed to say it. They're like, no, it's Korea. And you're like, okay, I want to get out of here.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, why would they get angry about that? You know what I'm saying?
So where were you guys going when you were going back to South Korea?
We were going back to kind of like the very similar area near the border.
DMZ.
Yeah, DMZ. So near the border, DMZ. That's what's the trip about Korea. If you ever go there, you could go to like a restaurant near the border and like eat dinner and see North Korea. Like see the buildings and the lights and everything. It's a trip, man. If you ever come, I'll take you.
Go to the DMZ.
We'll go to we'll go to the restaurant and eat, and we will be looking over here at the border, and there'll be like fake buildings.
Yeah, I've been to the other. I was in Pyongyang.
Pyongyang.
Yeah, I was there a long time ago for a hockey tournament. Yeah. But it's interesting. The food was similar, but it was just like the quality was terrible. It's like it was Korean food, but just like if you ate the worst Korean food. Yeah. That's basically what it was. Oh fuck! I hope I don't die for that either. Well, so you went back at that age, and now you're coming back into Korea, and
kind of like flipped. Flipped now.
So now you're Korean shit probably.
Yeah, my Korean is not very good. I'm more Americanized now. You know what I mean? And and it's just like instantly people notice that, even as a kid. But I was actually also going to an international school at that time too. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like I was around like all Koreans. At a Korean school, I was at an international school with like all the military brats, so to say. I guess I was one as well. And but the experience that I had that really like stood out in my mind of why, like being like Americanized was not a good thing in Korea was when I was living there at that time. I think I was maybe in like 5th grade, right? And my school was out on vacation, and my friend, like my next door neighbor, this was when I was living off the base with my family, he was Korean, and he went to a Korean school in the neighborhood. So like we became friends, right? So he's just like, hey, you should come with me to school. Like you're not going to school anyway, so you should come with me to school and like meet everybody and hang out. So I go there, right? And I'm just like, what? It was a trip, right? Like I'd never been to a Korean school in my life, and I'm just looking at everybody. And first thing is a trip because everybody's the same, because I've been used to the States, right? Where everybody's like different. And I went to international school where everybody's different, diversity, right? And instantly over there, I fought somebody at their school. Like somebody attacked me because I don't know why. There was no reason. It was just like they were just mad because I was there. And my friend was going around telling them, yeah, he's from America. He's Americanized and, he speaks English and stuff. Yeah, also speaking English is not a good thing as well. And we'll get into that later when we talk about when I was in the military in Korea. But yeah, so like, that example, like going to a Korean school with my friend just to visit, and I end up fighting one of the kids because he just doesn't like me.
Did he just come up to you, but you're able to understand what he's saying?
Yeah, of course.
Why he's pissed off?
Yeah. It's just like, leave. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, who are you to tell me to leave? You know what I mean? I'm here with my friend visiting, like, to have a good time, right? But not everybody wants to have a good time. So I ended up, like, fighting him in some, like, dirt patch in the school, field or something like that. In Korea, schools, like, there's no grass, so it's just fields, right? Just rocks and dirt. But it was just, once that happened, I was just like, man, I cannot catch a break, man. Like, I go to America, people want to fight me because who I am, and then I come back to Korea, people try to fight me. There's a term for Koreans in the Korean language, for Koreans that either were born abroad or lived abroad and came back, and it's Gyopo. I don't think any other language has a term for like a person that was born in a country, left and came back, and now you're labeled this. Do Do you know?
No, I mean, I guess expat, but that's not the term.
Yeah, but it's not. It doesn't really have a negative
No.
connotation, right?
It has a negative connotation.
Expat does, you think?
No, I mean,
yeah. It kind of does to me. You know what I mean? Because they're just like they want to label you, right? Like, oh, you speak English really well. Your Korean accent is shit, and your Korean is kind of shit. And we know now you lived abroad. Now you are Gyopo. Like, and you're not you're not a real Korean. That's what I would face all the time. It's like, you're not a real Korean.
And they would introduce you, like friends would introduce you this way.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay, I get it.
And then it's like, then they're like, you can see their eye, like, and then like, I was like, man, that's not a good thing. Like, I never liked that term, Gyopo. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, they were labeling you before they even knew who you were. You know what I mean? Like, I would never do that. Like, I would never just label somebody before I knew who they were. You know what I mean? And then it's just, you can't do nothing about it. Because when you go back to Korea, everywhere you go, it's like, if they know who you are, they're just like, oh, he's a Gyopo. Don't mind him. He's a Gyopo, right? Why does he act this way? Oh, he's a Gyopo. Like, that's what it was. So it's kind of negative, right? It's like the mindset is different.
But they wouldn't be trying to also show you off to friends like, hey, I hang out with the Gyopo.
Well, for women is different, right? For women is different, I think. Like, Gyopo used to be like this, what do you call that? Like little, I forgot what it's called. Novelty. Gyopo was a novelty for a while, but I missed that wave. I missed the novelty wave. That was like back
post Gyopo.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like the K-pop wave, right? But there was a Gyopo wave where I heard it was like the 90s. Like, if you were like Gyopo and you went back to Korea, like, it was like,
you're a celebrity.
Yeah, you're a celebrity for real. Like, but that wave was over with.
And everyone just got tired of these Gyopos. So like, that's enough.
Yeah, for real, because they were just causing problems probably, right? So, and then and if they did cause problems, they would just leave.
Yeah, maybe they're going around, starting fights. But hey, I'm a Gyopo.
Yeah,
and then you got other Koreans starting fights, and they're not really. They're just throwing the term around. They're like, all right, that's enough. No more Gyopos.
Yeah.
And as you're coming in right at the end, you didn't get the memo.
Yeah, because when I went back, as an adult, right, in like 2004 is when I went back to Korea. That's when the wave was already over, and it was just like, it was still a little bit there, you know what I mean? But it wasn't like, there was just more of like, oh, you're not a real Korean. That's the only thing that really, like, I don't know if it hurt me, but it bothered me. Like, how am I not a real Korean? Like, are you not a real, what are you?
Canadian.
Are you not a real Canadian?
I don't want to be anymore.
He doesn't want to be a Canadian. But like, where's your family from?
Yeah, Canada. Definitely.
No, before they were
probably like Ireland, UK.
You see, so like, let's say you were like one generation removed from Ireland, right? Then you'd be Irish, right, or the UK or whatnot. But someone coming up to you and be like, "Yo, you're not Irish."
Yeah. Oh, I'd be like, yeah. Well, unless you're born, I think you need to be born there to be able to justify that, right?
True.
And which you were.
Yeah, I was, but I look at it like that too. You know what I mean? I was born there. But then if it's in your blood, it's in your blood, man. Like, if you have Irish blood running through your veins, then you're Irish. You know what I mean? And you're Canadian. It's not like you can just be like one. You know what I mean? That's why they have terminology like Korean American and African American, right? You could be two. That's why they have dual passports and citizenships and all that, right?
Maybe I need
there's no limit.
Irish passport.
You should. That is probably valuable.
Canadian communists, they're taking me down.
That is something that I had to like deal with, and I still kind of deal with that a little bit. I don't really think about it too much, but yeah, like, am I Korean? That's crazy to say, right?
And so, how long were you then in Korea until you went back to the U.S.? Like 13, 14?
I was there for like 2 years.
Oh, just 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. At the end of 6th grade, my parents or my stepdad retired from the military. He had already did 20 years, I think. And he retired, and then we moved back to the States and moved into this town near Savannah, Georgia. It's like southern Georgia, which is like, I don't know, southern, the southern United States is it's crazy, right? So like, I moved into this small town and went to this school. This is 6th grade, right? Middle of 6th grade. Went to this school of like 3,000 students, but it had like elementary, middle school, and high school all in one campus.
A big school.
It's a big school, right? I was the only Asian in that school.
I was gonna say for sure you're the only Asian there.
And imagine the problems that I ran into at that school. I fought more than any period in my life at that school. Because that school would never suspend you if you fought. Like that school, in gym class, the teachers would let you fight and they would watch and laugh about it and then clean you up and then send you to the next class. So like you would go to school every week and I was fighting somebody. Because why? I'm the only Asian. Like, who's the best guy to fight? The only Asian. Like, there's, but it wasn't like I was hiding, you know what I mean? I was like out there. Like, if you're playing basketball, all right, let's play some hoops, right? Like, let's go. It's not like I was terrible at sports. So like I would want to do these things, right? It would probably been better if I avoided all of that and like kind of like isolated myself, right? But then that would have been just a terrible existence. So I was just out there, even though like fighting was something I didn't want to do, but it was just like, hey, if it happens, it happens. And it's just, I have the same attitude now, you know what I mean?
But they were also probably fighting. There's probably lots of fights going on. Well.
For sure.
Like, I mean, school of 3,000, that's a big ass school.
Yeah, it's a big school. And it was a trip, man. It was all just whites and blacks. That's it. There was nobody else. It was crazy. No teachers, everybody was white or black. No there's no Spanish, nothing. It was crazy. I was like, I don't even know how I survived.
Very divided, yeah.
Yeah, very divided. But the thing is, like, yes, back then, or even now, it's like divided. Whites and blacks are divided, right? But then they come together because they have a common enemy, who is me. You know, enemies become friends, right?
Yeah.
When they have a common enemy. So, so like it was a trip, man. Like going to that school for like, luckily I only went there for like 6 months, and then I moved to the Seattle area, near Seattle. But
that's where you were beating up white people now.
No. But
you're like, all right, I'm taking over this school.
So like in that school, the problems would just come from like sports, basically playing sports, and you get into altercations, and then the racist terminologies will come out, and then because it was never like I was racist towards other people, ever. You know what I mean? It was always like people just like initiating it towards me for some odd reason, and it was just like it was kids, man. Like I'm not even talking about adults yet. It's like kids doing this, and like you said earlier, it's a learned behavior, right? Especially most likely coming from the grandparents.
Is this still in high school at this point?
This is in 6th grade.
Oh shit! So I mean, you got a lot. Like right up to like age 12, you've been through a lot.
Yeah. It's just like moving.
Yeah, moving a lot. Yeah.
People always think of moving as a good thing, but it can be a bad thing.
How was it every time you had to move? Was there like that built up tension or anxiety, or was it just like now you're used to it? Okay, we're moving again.
I'm just used to it.
Yeah.
I've always been used to it. I could adapt to any country, location now. I could.
But like as a kid, there wasn't that argument, like, because you make friends and then you leave them. There wasn't like, fuck, I don't want to move, mom and dad. Like, that like, I've just made all these friends here. Can we stay? Or was it always pretty, okay, I understand, we got to go.
Well, our parents were very clear on, you have no choice.
Yeah.
Right. You're a kid. You're just going to follow the family. And so there was not much argument. And my dad was military. So like I grew up saying, yes, sir, no, sir. Yes, sir, no, sir. Yes, sir, no, sir, everything. And you're like, it was like a drill sergeant at home, basically. So there was no arguments, really.
And probably you're with a lot of other military kids, so they are all going through the same thing anyways. So like it's nothing. Like when you're going to these military schools, like you said in Maryland or by the DMZ, when kids were leaving school, there probably wasn't going away parties every single time. Everyone's just so used to it, right?
It's just, people just disappear.
Right.
And back then, there was no social media. There was no internet. So it's like, how are you going to keep in contact with those kids? What are you going to write letters? You know what I mean?
Have you ever ran into like an old friend just randomly? Because you would have been moving around so much.
There's a story there. Yeah. There's a story there. So when I lived in Korea, right, the 2 years that I lived there, right, there was these two brothers named Jason and Josh, right? And we all played on the same basketball team for our school. And and they were just both tall, like they stood out, for kids. But anyways, so we were on the same basketball team. I was friends with his older brother, but Josh, the younger brother, was the same age as me. But I was friends with his older brother. We're on the same team, right? So we played basketball together in the league, played other teams. And then after I left, you forget about everybody. It's not like you're like, remembering them and crying about it. No, you just leave and you go to the next spot. And then when I moved to Seattle, the Seattle area, right? See, one thing about Seattle area, it is much more calmer than any other spot that I've lived, right? It's just like, it's not as, I don't know, like the people are different. I think they just grew up differently from the South compared to like the East Coast, you know, like it's just different. But yeah, it's just like the Seattle area was like, it kind of slowed down a little bit with the racism stuff in that area, but still it was there. You know what I mean? Still it was there. Yeah, so what was I talking about?
This guy, Josh.
Yeah, Josh.
Your
Anyways,
buddy Josh, yeah.
So I moved from Georgia to the Seattle area, and we moved into this small town called South Hill. It's a small town, right? Just outside of Seattle. And I started going to school there, like 7th grade, middle school, or junior high. And I'm going to school, you know, first, you know, year of school, you know, doing whatever, you know what I mean? It was pretty good school, made a lot of friends, whatnot. And then I see this kid in the school arrive, and he's like a new kid. And I'm like looking at him like, man, that fool looks familiar. And so I go up to him, he's like, yo, what's your name? He's like, Josh. But the thing is, like, when I knew him a few years ago, he was like not as tall. He just like sprouted out. He's just massive. And I was like, Josh, it's like, did you live in Korea? He's like, yeah. I was like, where's your brother at? Because that's the first thing. I was friends with his brother.
Yeah.
His brother is like, oh, he's, you know, of course he's at school, right? He's probably going to the high school. And I was just like, that blew my mind, because like my dad had retired from the military by that point, right? And then we moved into the same city, in the same town, and going to the same school, which is very. And then also, we weren't even friends. We were friends in Korea, but like when we were in the States, like we didn't even hang out with each other. You know what I mean? Which was wild, right? But yeah, have you ever had that experience?
I don't think. Maybe just running into people from traveling, you meet them again randomly.
Yeah. And then that dude became like a massive like meth head, and you know
the older brother.
No, the younger one. Oh. But yeah, that's a whole nother storyline right there. Yeah, I've had that experience where like I've like met somebody in another country, and then just randomly met them again in another country.
Did you go run into his older brother, or now?
Yeah, of course.
And did you guys become friends at that point?
No.
Just because
like,
the age difference.
Yeah,
now.
just age difference, and it's just like different crews. I guess you know, like me in middle school, I was more like into the sports, you know, trying to become an athlete or whatnot, you know, wrestling and football and basketball or whatever. But like his older brother wasn't into that anymore. So it was just like, I was just running with the kids that were into sports, like kind of like a jock in a way. Yeah, that's what I was into. So I think at that age, whatever you're into is usually who your friends are, right? That's probably your experience as well. So yeah, that was the experience of meeting someone. But after that, yeah, I never really hung out with them and wasn't really close to them, but I would see them around, and it was very weird.
What were you planning to do then to go to university? I mean, now you're kind of in the media side. I mean, was any of this pre-planned?
No. None of this is pre-planned. So the media side, you want to talk about the media
like
side?
Getting into like that direction of that path. I mean, we can touch upon, you had to, I'm assuming you had to go back to Korea again. Mm-hmm. Everybody has to serve their military time, especially if you're born there and you're holding a Korean passport. So tying that all in together up to your education and even then connecting that to the media, how did that all come together?
Well, I went back to Korea in 2004, right? And went into the military in 2005, 6-ish, right?
But your Korean passport, you're not holding an American passport at any point, right?
No. I was just like a permanent resident.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I went back, I went to the military, went to boot camp, and then got stationed also near the border. It was very weird, right? Near the border. And then I hurt my back. It was just all within like a 3-4 month span. I just hurt my back, and it was like, you know, when you have a slip disc in your back and your nerves are pinched and you can't go to sleep, you can't lay down, you can't do anything.
What age is this?
This is 26.
26. So you're going to the military much later now.
Yeah. Like all the other kids were like 18, 19, some were 20, and that's like the oldest. Like I was 26, and going into the military. So everybody was looking at me all weird.
But you have to, right?
You have to, yeah. I cannot leave. They revoked my passport once I arrived.
So you're arriving because you haven't done any military. They're taking it at the border and saying you're going, and it's 4 years, isn't it?
Well, they didn't take it at the border. It's just like they sent you a letter to like a close family member or whatnot, and then your passport is invalid until you serve your time. So I was like, man, because I was thinking about just like, I'm not gonna go, and then I found out that you can't use your passport to leave the country. So I was just like, okay, I think I'm gonna go, because I don't think it was that difficult. And plus, I was in pretty good shape at that time, so I was like, boot camp shouldn't be that difficult, So I go to boot camp, get stationed, hurt my back, get transferred to a military hospital for 2 months, get surgery on my back. The first surgery didn't go as planned. So the next day they put me in surgery again. So I had double surgery on my back-to-back days. And then like maybe a month after that, they released me on, what's when you get released from the military?
Yeah, I know. I forget the word, but yeah.
Yeah, so like they released me with that, right? So basically I don't get the benefits or whatnot of like somebody that served the military the whole 2 years, because I was only in there for 6 months.
Oh, so Koreans, you only have to do 2 years.
I think maybe it's different now, but yeah, before me it was like 3 years. Before that it was 4 years.
Okay,
but now it was 2 years. I think now it's 18 months maybe. I'm not for sure, but yeah. So once I got out of there, and the hospital told me like, you shouldn't do anything for like a year. And I'm like, how are you gonna sit around for a year? So I was just like trying to find work or whatnot, and luckily I had a friend in Korea hooked me up with a job, and then I pursued that. But then fast forwarding to the media stuff, I was working a job, and I was like, man, this job, even though it's paying well, I don't know if there's longevity.
Which city are you in at this point?
Seoul. Like I'm living in Seoul the whole time, pretty much. There's really nowhere else to live.
Is South Korea like that? Pretty much. I mean, you can go south to like Jeju, but this is getting more like tourism. Mm-hmm. Like everyone's in Seoul. Like this is pretty much.
Yeah, everybody's moving there. Everybody wants a job there. Everybody wants to go get their education there. It's not a good thing, to be honest. Like to me, it's not a good thing. But yeah, so because of that, I'm in Seoul the whole time. And I had to realize, I had a realization like, man, I need to find something that I could do, that's not just going to cut me off at the legs. Something that I could do on my own, something that I could take to me when I'm 60 years old. And I just thought of like MMA. And I was like, I've been watching MMA since like, I watched the first UFC when I was young, which was like 92 or 93. I bought the I didn't buy it. My friend bought the pay-per-view. Watched that. Never thought about it again. And then when I went back to Korea in 2004, Pride was still going on, and they were showing that on TV. So I would be watching that a lot. And then the UFC started to gain some, traction as well, like maybe 2010s or whatnot. And I was just watching it as a fan. And then I was like, man, maybe I should, because you always get this, especially with social media, they're always telling you, do something that you love. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like a theme, and I was just like, that really got to me and said, oh man, I should do something that I really enjoy doing. And so I just like reached out to a website, and I was like, is there any websites in Asia like covering MMA in English? So I looked at, there was one website called MMA in Asia, right? .com or something like that. Lily was the guy, the woman running it, and she was just doing it by herself. And I reached out to her and asked her like, hey, how do I get started? Do you need any help? You know what I mean? Like, what can I do? And she kind of guided me through everything and showed me like what needs to be done, like what the industry's like. And then eventually, like, I started writing articles, and I was terrible. I was shitty, but you need practice. So I was just writing, and then basically I was just like reading articles, learning, like structure, like teaching myself everything, right? Even though I have guidance from, Lily or whatnot, but, without like the internet, I probably wouldn't have this opportunity of like covering.
Sorry,
MMA.
what was the name of their like? It was a news website. It was a blog?
Yeah, it was a news website. It was a news website covering like all of MMA in Asia. There was nobody else doing it at that time, right?
And they're still doing it. I mean,
no, the site doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, I think there's another site that's named similar to it, but it's not the same one. But yeah, so I did that for a couple years on and off, you know what I mean? Because there's no pay in it, you know, at the start. I didn't expect to get paid. You know, I get like a little bit of money here and there, but it was nothing like, so I was working a full-time job and doing that at the same time. And I would like do it and not do it, do it and not do it, quit, start again. And, you know, I kind of like came to a roadblock after a couple of years thinking like, man, where is this going? You know what I mean? Like, cause I'm working a full-time job and I'm pretty much spending the rest of the time that I have, like trying to figure out like what I can do in MMA media. Right. So about, I think it was like 2016 or 17. No, 2017 maybe. I'm not for sure. But yeah, I was like writing articles, covering shows. You know, basically that's what I was doing the whole time, just writing articles, covering shows. And I was like, man, I got to do something different. So I was like, maybe I should do a podcast. And so I reached out to George. And this was when George was the coach at Tiger. And I was like, maybe I should get George, you know, to come on the podcast. And like we could do a podcast together. And if you go on YouTube, you could watch those old podcasts. It's still up there. But yeah, and that's when I started like Kumite Radio, which was the birth of me talking with fighters, interviewing fighters. But it wasn't me actually interviewing fighters. It was just me and George talking about like MMA in Asia. And yeah, and it gave me good practice of just talking with other people. But, you know, after a while, George just got too busy, right, with what he's doing, where he couldn't like consistently do it. So I had to flip the script and say, okay, maybe I should not do a podcast and I should just reach out to fighters and use my network from the past couple of years to start scheduling interviews with these fighters. And that's what I started doing.
How did you initially like connect with George in, I mean, essentially Thailand?
Well, George, you know, like when I was covering shows in Korea, I would go to like the Road FC shows, and a lot of the Tiger Muay Thai fighters would go and fight on those shows. So George would obviously be with them because he would be the corner. He's the coach. And you know, after a few shows, you get to figure out like who's who. And I just went up to George, I think at a Road FC, and said, you know, and just introduced myself and said like, you know, and just chit-chatted, you know what I mean? Nothing really too major. And just to get to know him, you know, I think this was when like Bruno Miranda was big in Road FC, and Rafael Fizev. He was still fighting for them. So it was like they were, you know, building something. Tiger was building something at that time, and George was one of the, you know, faces. So yeah, that's how I met George. And then he would come into Korea, and then like we would meet, you know, and then just get to know each other a little bit more. And he would come often. And then yeah, and just like that's how the relationship started. This was like, yeah, I think the first time I met him was in 2016 or 15. This was when like he was still fighting.
Yeah, so not that long ago then, maybe eight years. Oh,
Yeah.
I guess it is.
That's a long time ago,
How
man.
fast time goes, yeah.
8 years is a long time. But yeah, he was transitioning to becoming a full-time coach. And then yeah, that's how, you know, we became friends pretty much. And I've known him ever since. Like he's helped me so much. Like him and Frank. Yeah, those two guys, they've helped me so much. Like I owe a lot to them.
Connecting you to these
high
profile
fighters. And this was when I was like nobody, you know what I mean? Like this was like, I was nobody. Like even right now I'm nobody, right? Like I might have a little, you know, experience, but really in the grand scheme of things, I'm a nobody. But even though I was a nobody, they saw, I guess they maybe saw something, you know what I mean? They saw the grind, I don't know. But they would just be like, they trusted me to like interview these fighters when, you know, I didn't really have a huge platform. And he would introduce me to people, and Frank as well. And yeah, man, without them, I don't know if I would be doing this. Still doing it right now.
And now you're over here, you're training at Bangtao Muay Thai and MMA. You're how much longer are you going to be here? A couple months?
Well, I'm in and out.
In and out.
So like now I'm like 100%, you know, fully immersed in MMA media.
And you're working with and for MMA
so I work for the All-Star,
Yep.
which most of my content goes up on that with them. And then, you know, I do a little side work as well with covering one championship shows. I think I'm going to start doing that again, pick that up again eventually. But yeah, like, you know, here and there, you know, you pick up little work, but mainly with the All-Star. And yeah, and it seemed, you know, I've been trying to grow that for a couple of years now. and trying to do different content.
And you're doing like kind of your remote interviews. You're about 20-minute interviews with different fighters, and you've interviewed tons of big names. I mean, we don't even need to list them off. I mean, champions. I mean, you've Yuri Prohaska. I mean, you've all these big names. You've had these interviews with. That type of content, I saw recently you did a post. You're looking to kind of even grow it exponentially, like just doing more every week. What's kind of the plan for that?
Well, the last 3 months to 6 months, right? I just been focused on like researching social media, researching content, researching YouTube, researching everything, right? Just sitting there watching videos, and like just digesting like patterns and systems of how to grow, because nowadays everything's social media is pretty much, right? It's like if you're not on there, it's very, very hard to grow anything, right? It's just, that's what everybody's looking at. So that's what I was focused on. And I'm starting to implement some of these little tricks, right, that people talk about slowly, not like all at once, because that's a lot of work, but slowly trying to, do more of the Instagram reels, do more of like, like highlight like clips, what I mean? Do more of like a live long form podcast, and then clip those up to draw attention, collab with people.
Are you doing all the production?
I'm doing everything.
Scheduling, everything.
100%. Like,
I saw you set up like a little bit of a studio at your place.
I did, and that took massive time to research and understand of how to set it up, even though it's still not very good, but it's still it's a work in progress. But yeah, like there's a lot of investment, man. Like when I first started out, I invested a lot of time into like learning how to write and learning how to do all this other stuff, even like interviewing, face to face. Like I would watch, like so many videos on like how to interview people, how to get answers out of people that you want. In a way, how to manipulate people into saying things that, that are true, but maybe they wouldn't say that. You know what I mean? So there's so much, that people don't know about it. But if you want to learn, it's out there to learn. But yeah, just with interviewing, man, I don't know. I'm still learning.
Do you have any like specific, let's say, whether it's a UFC fighter or just in general an MMA fighter that you might have interviewed in the early days, and you could tell, okay, this guy's going to beat somebody way before they even, were on the radar of, let's say, the general public?
I'm going to be honest with you. I could say like, oh yeah, I knew Alex Volkanovski was going to be the world champion. No, I didn't know.
I don't think anyone knew.
I didn't know any, like I've interviewed so many fighters from like when they were like a regional fighter with like 5 fights to like 15, 20 fights in the UFC. I never knew or got an inclination of like this person is the next big star. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess unless you actually see them in the gym or.
Yeah,
something. I mean, even Volkanovski. I remember when George came on first. Like, I think I went out there and told George, I'm like, you have to understand the general public was rooting for Holloway in all those fights. It is what it is. And actually, no one believed or even understood the level he was at, Volkanovski.
No.
And those, I mean, would you agree on that? Like,
no
one. Like, were you cheering for Holloway?
No.
I think as like the general public, I was like, because you've been following for so long, and Volkanovski kind of just like came out of nowhere and then just took over, and it was very surprising. Even every fight, you're like, oh, he can't do it again. Holy fuck! Even the Ortega fight, you're like, is he gonna do it again? And then he just kept steamrolling. Yeah. He didn't really get the respect he deserved at the beginning of that boom.
That was the thing. He wasn't getting, even as a champion, because you have a champion like Max Holloway who's a massive fan favorite.
Yeah.
So when you become a fan favorite and you're the champion, whoever comes next is gonna have a hard time taking over that spot, right? And that's just what Volkanovski ran into. You know what I mean? If Max Holloway was the champion for a long period of time. It's not like he won one fight and he was a fan favorite. It was like he was a fan favorite for many
He was going on like an Aldo run almost.
Yeah. So, but Volk, man, he's the type of guy that's like, from me being around Volk and interviewing him throughout the years and seeing him come up and becoming who he is, he's never changed, man. Like, he's always been the same person. That's the thing that I look at these fighters. Like, all the fighters fight, and they have bad performances and good performances. They lose and they win. But the unique position I'm in is like some of these fighters, I get to actually know them, you know what I mean? Like behind the interview, like behind the cameras, and to get to understand like who they really are, because some of these fighters, or a lot of these fighters, don't reveal even like 50% because they're mostly talking about fighting, you know, they don't actually talk about themselves, you know? And yeah, so with Volk, man, it's just like I would never be able to root against him because I've known him since like
you interviewed him very like almost entering the UFC. Yeah. So then it's a bit of a different like situation. Like I don't think he came on the general public's radar till maybe a fight or maybe two before the Holloway to fight. Like he wasn't on, oh, who's this guy coming up? And finally when he got there, even they're like, Holloway's gonna win another one. And when that fight went on, you're like, holy shit, this is actually, because Holloway was just tuning everybody, right?
Yeah.
And the general public got to the point where like, he's just gonna do it again, and stopped in his tracks.
With Volkanovski, like what makes him so special is like when you watch him train, it doesn't look like, you know, no disrespect, but it doesn't look like it's anything special that he's doing. He's just really good at what he does. And he just makes it look easy. Because when you try to do what he's doing, you get tired. The foot don't move the same way. It's just different, man. It's just the guy is built for the style of fighting that he has. And he could implement it so well. And then he got a great mind for the sport as well. And that's why he's who he is, right? He's pound for pound, you know. Maybe not right now, but.
Do you see any younger fighters coming out of Bangtao Muay Thai? Because we get a lot that usually they come from the UK. I've seen a lot of young kids from the UK come into the gym. It looks like they're doing kind of mini fight camps, and then they're going back and they're doing their amateur fights. Is there anyone on your radar that you think could be special?
Are you talking about the team?
I'm talking about like these younger kids
that come in,
that come in, they train and they go back.
There's so many right now. There's so many teenagers, which is wild to me. Teenagers traveling around the world,
right,
to train with the best coaches, to train with pros, and fight like 5-6 times a year as a teenager. And there's a kid named Shea Williams at the gym right now. He's like a multiple-time champion. He's only 14, maybe 15, but he's like a multiple-time champion. Like he's knocking out adults. Literally he's 14 years old, sparring adults, head kick knocking them out. That's like, how many 14-year-olds would you like to fight? None of them, because like you think you beat all their asses, but this kid, he just looks like he's from Liverpool, so he's got that, you know, the accent and everything too. But he's a guy I think that you should look at, and there's a couple others, you know, 17, 18. You know Kenny. Kenny's also a kid that's been around forever as well. Like I see super potential in him, you know, in the future. And yeah, man, there's so many. But like as fighters, like already in the spotlight, I think Lerone Murphy is one of the fighters that we've seen recently at the gym.
He's 15 featherweight.
Yeah, he's number 15. He's undefeated. He doesn't even come from a fighting background, but he just has that work ethic. He just grinds, and he can just perform when it's time to perform. And I think there's a big future with him as well. Who else is at the gym? There's so many, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of young kids there. You can see, and then they'll pop up on my Instagram, and you check them out, and they're fighting back home. Usually, it's just they're on these smaller promotions, and they're training here for that. And they any of the kids that come here to train and go back, they usually win. Like they're not losing.
Well, there's the other group. There's a group of kids. They're not even kids. They're actually pros now, I believe, that come in. I forgot their names, but yeah, they just look like a ragtag of hooligans, right? Yeah. Not in a negative way. It's just like they don't look like fighters, but they're like the best prospects in the UK, which is wild to me. I'm sorry for not remembering their names, but yeah.
Well, there's so many faces and names that come through the gym. It's really hard to, you know.
Yeah.
I remember everyone. What in terms of the MMA scene in Korea with guys like Korean Zombie retiring? I think you have June Park as well, but I think he recently lost. He looked like he was on a bit of a run. Yeah. Do you see anything else on that landscape?
Well, there's a couple prospects, right? There's a flyweight kid. He's undefeated right now. He just recently won his UFC debut. Hyun Park. I think he has potential. He's also been out here at the gym multiple times. You know the story of him, right? Like him and Top Noi were in the same
it's
tournament.
That guy. He's more of a wrestling background.
Yeah. But his debut with his striking. So look out for Hyun Park. There's another kid he's gonna fight in a couple weeks, make his UFC debut as well. Chung-Yeon Lee, really good, solid all around. Been a champion regionally in Korea as well. Very good fighter. And like you said, there's Junyoung Park.
He's been around. He fought Glenn Sparv, if you know who Glenn Sparv.
Yeah, he beat the shit out of Glenn Sparv.
Yeah, I went and watched that one. Yeah. As George was in the corner.
Yeah, Frank.
Was it Frank?
Yeah.
It was in Korea, no?
No, it was in Taiwan.
Taiwan. I watched that one, and it was getting pretty hairy. He was on a bit of a run, and I think he might have lost in a decision, but he definitely just lost.
Yeah. Are you talking about Park?
Yes.
He did lose his last fight. Yeah. It was a sloppy fight, but he still has potential, man. I think he's good. His teammate Taeun Jung, who's a light heavyweight, he's also very good as well. Young, a big talented kid as well.
Park is probably not young then, I'm assuming. He's got to be 33.
Yeah, he's in his like prime.
Yeah.
Like this is the time to make the run for him.
Yeah.
You know, and one loss is not that bad. He's only lost twice in the UFC. I think his record is like 6-2 or something like that. So he's doing well for himself. There's a lot of young guys, now the landscape of MMA is changing a little bit in Korea and as well as Japan, as in like the fighters are different. The next generation of fighters are influenced by the Conor McGregor era, basically. And now the Koreans coming up, there's kids with, their own little, what is it? Personalities and characters and things like that. And like there's a promotion called Black Combat in Korea. Massive, like they do great production and everything. They produce the events with these fighters talking smack to each other, like like they're building it. It's like a movie for them. And even in Japan as well, like in Ryzen, like the young kids coming up, they're talking shit. They're talking trash. They're like getting at each other, you know what I mean? I enjoy it. I think it's okay. I think like talking trash is great. Respect is great. Whatever you enjoy, but I like it all.
The Japanese kid, you always see him at the gym. I call him Japanese Tony Ferguson.
Yeah.
You see him training.
Yeah.
It's the most craziest, like his training techniques where he's like hanging upside down on one leg, balancing on a foot with a weight in the other leg on some like rolly piece of PVC pipe he got somewhere. Like,
he's a trip, man.
I heard it, but is he doing quite well in Ryzen?
No, he fought for the PFL.
Oh, I thought he was in Ryzen at one point.
No, he wasn't.
Told me. Oh,
he fought for PFL, and he just got really like bad matchups. You know what I mean? They just threw him to the wolves, basically.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why they would do that, but that's what they did. He did well against the fighters, but it's just like, the level is there. He's still really young. I believe he's only like 20.
He must have another fight coming up because, I see this guy. He's training every day.
8 hours a day. It's like a shift for them.
I see him every morning. Me and him are friendly now because we train around the same time.
Yeah.
I even saw him Christmas Day and New Year's Day there.
Yeah,
I went both mornings and he's there.
Yeah, he's there. Like they're dedicated. It's just unique way of training, but they're fully.
Is that his mom
invested.
and dad?
Yeah, that's his mom and dad. I believe.
That's what I assume.
Yeah, they're fully invested, man.
Because even his mom's working out. Like she's doing, she's got the weights on. She's doing neck moves and strengthening her neck, and she's using resistance bands. So I'm assuming probably the father has some sort of old school martial arts background from Japan in them, right?
Yeah, they definitely do. I don't really know much about their story, but all I know is like they're training.
Yeah,
and it's different.
But they don't. I'm assuming they don't speak any English.
I have no idea.
I've tried to talk to him. I don't think it's any English. Because he asked one day, we were doing the lion's mane. He's like, oh, what's that? I'm like, but luckily I know how to say lion's mane in Japanese. It's Yamabushi Shiitake.
All right.
Because I know, because I use that word for like helping the product rank.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay. But that was it. That was the end of that conversation. Just before we wrap it up, it's probably been an hour. See, it goes so fast. Just talking more about like on a final note, being involved in doing the interviews, you've built your studio. Looks like you're planning to scale. I mean, 2024 just started. If we're to reconnect again at the end of the year, what do you expect to get done this year?
Well, I expect to build my following more. You know what I mean? Because I never really focused on that. I was always focused on my perception is like, I'm never wanting to be bigger than the fighter, right? I never, like, if I interview the fighter, that's why you're watching the interview. You're watching it for the fighter. You're not watching it for me. But now I feel like, okay, I have to flip this and say, okay, now I have to be out there a little bit more and grow myself, grow my following, and focus on myself on top of doing all the other stuff, right? So it's just adding more work. But I'm down for it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm ready for it. And by the end of the year, I hope to be in a better studio. Kind of like this place, you know, and and doing a show out of there, and maybe even like branching out into other types of media as well, not just MMA or combat sports, but you know, maybe more Asian centric
baseball
themes. Baseball, yeah.
Korean baseball, which is, if you're ever in Korea, it's actually the best experience.
It is.
Like, I don't even remember watching the game. I was just crushing beers and eating hot dogs
and chicken.
Korean baseball as an experience in Korea, like, that's probably the best thing you can do.
It is.
Phenomenal. The whole each side, two teams chanting. They all got their songs. You're learning the songs by the end. I mean, I would go back to Korea just for that experience. It was amazing. And
it's kind of like luxurious.
Oh, it's great.
The seats are nice.
It's not, you don't feel like, you know, a baseball game feels, you know, you got some guy next to you with more, you know, tattoos than teeth and no, I mean in the U.S. and Canada, but no, it was amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. They got the cheerleaders too.
Yeah, just for that.
The cheerleaders.
I gotta put a picture
proper.
up. I'll try.
They're all like racing girls. You know that, right?
Yeah.
They're all like racing girls that do like those jobs on the side. It's a trip.
Yeah, I mean, it keeps you there.
Yeah.
But I remember you have no idea what the score is. You don't even know what inning it is because you're kind of just trying to join into the songs and. Yeah. I don't, just as a foreigner there, if it was
if you're a foreigner, if you're visiting Korea, that's like, it should be on the list of things to do. Yeah.
And especially if you're the group, we were playing hockey. If a group of guys, it's a blast.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of teams, so it shouldn't be too hard to find.
Well, yeah, so we're probably going to move out of here hopefully soon. If any place ever lets us sign a contract, they're always changing their minds. And then I think I might get an office and then put the studio there. Haven't decided yet. Okay. Just on a final note, just before we wrap it up, I'll kick the camera right back. You got this big ass lens here. The big lens. If you can kind of just let everyone know, I'll put links in the description of how they can reach out to you and all that stuff.
Are you talking about social media?
Yeah, for your social media.
All right. So social media, very simple. Korean John on everything, like on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. If you type in Korean John, I think I'm the only one. So it's easy for you to find me. You could also get all of my content on the All-Star YouTube channel, actually the website as well. And we have an app. Go download the app, the All-Star app. It's phenomenal. You can make UFC picks and all of that stuff. It's very interactive. But other than that, you know, just keep watching. That's all I expect.
Yeah, and you'll see his name pop up. We were discussing that when you're watching UFC. Now, I don't think they didn't write Korean John. They still write it as like they write like Hyon Ko.
Well, my name is there, but underneath it does say Korean John.
Oh, because the tag.
Yeah, the tag.
Because of the tag.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyways, we were talking about that. If you're ever watching UFC, your Twitter appears all the time. And I always see it pop up, and I want to try to grab a snapshot. It's funny. And it's on like main cards, fight cards, you name it. You're always popping up there. I wonder how they pick that up.
It's my claim to fame, I guess.
Yeah, it's really
that's
cool.
my famous moment.
Well, they're pushing you. The algorithm's pushing you.
I guess so.
What's going on here? You got
now it's to the point where, like, you know, people are like telling me they're trying to get their tweet on the broadcast. They're telling me, and I'm like, "What are you telling me about it? I don't know. I don't know how I get my tweets on the broadcast. I have no idea.
Maybe it's the hashtag.
Well, it doesn't matter because everybody puts the hashtag.
Right, of the event. Right?
Yeah, everybody puts the hashtag of the event. I have no idea. Maybe I was just lucky enough to get selected at the start of the ESPN deal or something. I have no idea, but you know, ESPN, thank you.
Maybe
UFC.
they think you're someone else.
Maybe they do,
No,
or maybe they're like, oh, we got to fill the quota. We need one Asian. Maybe
It's all coming full circle.
How many more Asians have you seen on Twitter, like on the UFC broadcast?
Yeah, maybe.
None.
That's good. Keep it. Well, you can keep that strong at least.
Yeah, try to.
All right, that wraps up another episode. I didn't shave my head at the start of the year. I look like an absolute prisoner. All right, we're out. Okay, subscribe, like, do all that fun stuff. See ya.